and welcome to another video by ES Repair. I am your host, Mr. Fix-It. In this video, I'm going to be showing you a preview of the upcoming videos that I'm going to be doing. A lot of people have been asking me about building a computer and, what will they need to have and how much it would cost. Well, in this video, I want to give you an overview of the videos that I'm going to be doing. Now, this here is a case that I purchased. This is also known as a Barebone kit, and I'm going to be showing you all the different parts that you'll need and everything that's put together to make your computer work. Now, by the time you watch all these videos that I'm going to have online, you'll be able to build your own computer. And I will be pointing out the important parts of building computers and things to look out for and how to know if you're getting the most out of your money. The best thing to do if you're a beginner to this, you want to take it slow. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I don't mind. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. One of the things that I do here is build computers for people, and I wanted to show you what all takes place and what's involved in building these computers. To start, let me go ahead and show you all the pieces. What you see on the screen now is parts and all the pieces involved in building your own computer. Now, it may not look like much, but there is quite a bit here. Most of it is made onto the motherboard itself. Technology has changed in quite a bit in the past 2 decades. I have been around computers since Tandy Corporation, if many of you remember who they are. Over the years, I've seen a lot of changes. I built my first computer in 2001, 2002, and I've been building computers ever since. And for a while there, it's been difficult to keep up because technology was changing so much. Now, what you see on the table here is pretty much the new technology that's available today. I'm going to point out different features, different things, show you what to look for, what every part on the computer is and what it does. As you can see here, these are all the parts that you'll find in a typical computer. Barebone kits, which I'm going to show you later on how these work. They're real handy because the vendor who sells the kit already put the stuff together for you. I'm going to have some on my website, which I will have some links to on my videos to show you where you can get the kits, or if you need some parts to go along with your kit, I'll show you where to get them. This is just a typical what you'll find. This here, of course, is the case. This here particular is a micro case. This is the smallest version of the ATX form factor. This one here, of course, this is the power supply. This is what's going to give you the power for your computer. You got your Wi-Fi. For some of you, you're going to use Wi-Fi to connect to the internet. You also have your data cables to connect to your drives. The processor, as you see here, I don't know if you can see that or not, but the processor back here, let me go ahead and just pick it up. That is the processor for the motherboard. This one in particular is the AMD processor. The two that you'll find are Intel's and AMD's. They're the top 2 processor manufacturers for computers. This, of course, here is the motherboard. Now, this is the heart of any computer. Most technology nowadays is integrated into the motherboard. Over here, to the left, you have, or to the right, you have your memory. This is your system memory. This is where programs and data is processed in the memory, or also known as RAM. The motherboard, you have different sections. You got your memory, you got your PCI, you got your external connectors, and you have your SATA connectors. Plus you also have some extra connectors for additional abilities, like your front panel, which is on the front of your computer, and so on, but I will show you the different parts of those. Now, of course, you're going to have a hard drive. This one here is a solid state drive. This is one of the newest technologies. It's been out for a few years now, and it has been advancing quite a bit since. Now, the computer I'm building here is going to have both the traditional and a solid state, and I will show later on as to why I'm doing that. You may also find a card reader. The card reader here reads those flash memory cards like SDs, compacts, things like that. You also have your optical drive. Most desktop computers will have these. This one here is a particular CD DVD writer, and this one here doesn't cost very much. This one here I paid about 20 bucks for it, and it's a good DVD player and writer. I've also got the software here that I'm going to need. You also have software for the hardware, anything you're going to add, like the Wi-Fi. I've got the software here. The CD drive, I got the software. In Barebone kits, you're going to get a CD or DVD that contains all the drivers and stuff for the motherboard, and of course the operating system. You're going to need those. The processor is going to have a heatsink similar to this one. It probably won't be so big. It just depends on the wattage and the power that the processor puts out. If you're going to do, especially for people who wants to do overclocking, which I'm not going to advise, because it is a dangerous process. If you're not careful when you're overclocking, you're just wasting money. Now, when you buy these kits, you're also going to get a book. This one here is for the motherboard, to show you all the settings, shows you where the jumpers are, and the memory types that's compatible with that specific motherboard. It also shows you how to configure BIOS, which I will go into later on in my other videos. You're also going to have a book that comes with the case. This shows you everything that you should have with your case, any hardware, and it shows you how to make connections in the hardware, how to insert your drives, and how to take certain parts of like the front panel and how to take it off, things like that. So as you can see here, you're also going to have, and I have a bowl here because I put all the hardware into this. When you buy the kits and stuff, especially these cases, you're going to come with the screws and hardware and stuff that goes along with the case. You want to keep these separate and you don't want to lose them. I just put them in the bowls because that's what I'm going to be using. Motherboards will have a faceplate that matches with them. I don't have it showing here because I have it in the back of the case already, but I'll show it to you in a moment. But what you see here is what you'll find in a typical computer. It doesn't look like much, but that's because most of the technology, like USB, your audio, your video, things like that, are pretty much built into the motherboard nowadays, which makes it more cost effective and more compact, but you can still make some upgrades. Now, once you have an understanding, you'll be able to build one of these computers, because I am going to show you how to turn this and put them together. Everything that you see here now is everything that my Barebones kit came with. Now, these are pretty much the best way to go if you want to build your own PC. You get the case that you see here. You'll get, some cases you get a motherboard, the processor to go to it, some memory, internal hard drive, and a power supply. Plus you get the hardware to connect to your components. This kit here, which was a nice kit, I've tested these out before. This one here was around $450. This here came with 8 gigabytes of memory, DDR3s. It came with an Asus motherboard. It came with an AMD FX processor, 3.8 gigahertz, which can be overclocked to 4 gigahertz. I've tested out the processor before and I was able to get it to go up to 4.8 gigahertz. But we won't worry about overclocking because you can really have some problems if you try to overclock. It also came with a 1 terabyte drive that you see here. This is a Western Digital SATA 3 type hard drive. This is what came with it. The power supply here is a 650 watt power supply, and of course I got the data cable to connect my hard drive and optical drive. Now this particular kit, like I said, it was about $450. I also had to buy extra stuff. I had to buy the flash memory card reader. I bought the operating system. I bought a 240 gigabyte solid state drive, the Wi-Fi adapter. There's some other things that you may have to buy, but the best way to do this is shop around. Don't go to the nearest bare bones kit that you see. You want to make sure you're getting your money's worth, because every vendor has their own idea of a bare bones kit. Now I will have some ones that I would recommend on my website later on that you can check out and see if you want to try and build one. They're not hard to do. Once you basically understand the process and how everything connects together, then you can build your own PC. I was never taught to build my own PC. I actually learned it on my own, and like I said earlier, I built my first one in 2001 and been building them ever since. Now I'm building this one here for a friend of mine, and I'm going to show you the process on building these, and perhaps you'll be able to build your own. And if you have any questions, just let me know and I'll be glad to answer any questions that I can. But basically this is what you'll find. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'm going to show you where to start. The motherboard is the major component of any computer. It contains everything from your PCI, your PCI Express, your connectors such as audio, video, USB, keyboard, mouse, to your memory, to store your programs and stuff while they're running, your input output for your hard drives, optical drives, and it's a main component. Without it, nothing works. On top of this, you'll see this socket here. Now there are different motherboards and they're designed for a specific processor. For instance, this one here is for this processor that you see here. This is a AMD FX. It's one of the AMD's processors. This is a particular socket 942. If you look these up, you'll notice that there's dozens of different sockets. From the old socket 462s, which were the AMD Athlon processors, and this one here is the 942. Now the processor, of course, is the brains. This does all the processing in the computer. It does everything. Without it, your computer won't work. But this here is basically the brains. Now, with motherboards, you can choose between either AMD or you can choose Intel-based motherboards. Now every motherboard is designed to use specific processors. Most cases it's best to, if you get a bare bones kit, to get one with a motherboard and a matched processor to go with it. This saves you a lot of hassle as to what processor will go to what motherboard. This here, all you'll need to know is the specifics. The speed of the processor, what kind it is, if it's a AMD or Intel, and what features it may have. A lot of that you may not have to worry about. The biggest part you want to make sure is that the motherboard has everything you want. You want to be sure it's got enough memory. This one here can go up to 32 gigabytes of DDR3s. You want to make sure it has a certain type. Some motherboards are DDR2s, some of them are DDR3s. You want to make sure it has the expansion slots that you need. If you need PCI, which is the bottom one here, then that's what you'll get. If you need PCI Express, that's these top ones up here, that's what you want to get. Now this one here combines the two because some of the hardware that I'm going to add to this uses PCI. I don't have anything for the PCI Express because that is usually used for graphics. This motherboard here in particular has the graphics built into it, which is fine. It takes up less space. You may not get that much power from it as if you bought a standalone card, which I'll go into later on in another video. Now, to do these are SATA connectors. This is for the new hard drives. Every one of them are SATA nowadays. You may find a motherboard that has IDE connectors, which is fine. If you have some old IDE drives you want to use, you can, but they're much slower. New technology is going to be using the SATA drives. Now it's going to depend on whether it's a SATA 1, 2, or a 3. The SATA 3s are much faster than the original versions. So what we're going to do, if you look down here in the bottom, you'll see some headers. Down here, these are for USB and OT front headers. This over here is to connect the power button, switches, and the speaker. This over here, this is for the battery. Now I took the battery out because I did not want any power in the motherboard while I'm working with it. It's always a safe thing to do. The battery is used for the RTC clock and the CMOS or the BIOS. That's what this battery is for, but you don't have to have it because when you have the computer, it just got the default settings programmed into it. Once I put the battery back in, it'll still have those default settings. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the parts of the motherboard. If you look on the back, as you can see, I'm just grabbing it by the edges because I don't want to touch anything on the board. If you look in the back, you'll notice you got different connectors. This one here, on this side here, this is for surround sound. This motherboard here has a built-in audio, high definition audio. It can put out 8 channels of audio, which is actually 7.1 surround sound. You have the front speakers, the center speakers, subwoofer. You also have the side speakers and the rear speakers. Here you see on top is the Ethernet for Ethernet internet access. The bottom is USB 2.0. If you look to the right, you'll notice that these look similar to USB 2.0, but they're blue. Now these are the new 3.0 version. This here provides a lot more speed, which is often used for storage drives like external hard drives. That's what this is for. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, you'll see the external connections, the videos. This one here has a VGA, which is the oldest. You have DVI. In this case, this one here is particularly the DVI-D version. It's pure digital. You also have down here the HDMI connector. So as you can see, you got 3 choices that you can use to connect to a monitor. This up here, you may or may not see it. This is an optical digital output for audio. If you have a digital receiver that uses fiber optic connection, you can use this connector to connect your computer to a surround system. Over here you can see there's two more USB 2.0s that you can use. Above it is a new plug that I've seen lately. Older computer motherboards had a PS2 connector for keyboard and a mouse. This one here is a combo. If you were to plug in your mouse or your keyboard, the motherboard can distinguish which one you have connected. If you have a PS2 mouse, then you can hook a mouse to it. If you have a PS2 keyboard, then you connect a keyboard to it. And then the other one you can use for your keyboards or your mouse, whichever the case may be. But these are the common connectors that you'll find on motherboards. As you can see, there's a lot of integration that they've done over the years. Now I'm going to go ahead and set that back down. Now, some of the other connectors you're going to find here in the upper left hand corner is the 4-pin. This is known as a P4 or an ATX 12 volt. Some of the boards just have a 4-pin, some of them have 8. It just depends on the power requirements that the processor and the motherboard requires. This, of course, is the processor socket. I don't have the processor in it, but I will show you how to set up these processors. Over here are DDR3s. Take note, you'll notice that these are colored. Some motherboards are colored, some motherboards are not. It just depends on what they have or how they want to design their motherboards. Now, I will be speaking in detail about memory modules, because the way technology has changed, you'll be running into what's called dual channel or multi-channel memory, and I'm going to show you what that actually is and how to set them up. Now, you'll also see over here, this here, you may see or may not see it. This is just an old serial port connector that was used by the old COM ports that you probably remember that was in the back. This here next to it is a LPT, which is a parallel printer. This is for the older compatible printers that you may have that were parallel. You can connect a connector to that for the back. They're fading out slowly, but you don't be surprised if you do find a new motherboard that has one on it. This here, of course, is the 24-pin power connector. This powers everything on the motherboard. It's 24-pin. It provides everything from 3.3 volts all the way to 12 volts. Down here in the bottom are the SATAs. The number of SATA connectors is how many devices that your computer can use. Usually if you have more than 2, then chances are the motherboard can do what's called a RAID, which I won't go into that right now, but maybe later on I'll go into it. Now, even though this is a processor, it's going to have a big heat sink, which I'm going to show later on when I install it. I'll show you the heat sinks that these things can come with. Now, keep in mind, some Barebone kits do come with a heat sink for the processor, some do not. So be very vigilant about if your processor comes with a cooling heat sink or not. If it doesn't, you'll need to get one that matches for it. If it does, then don't worry about it. Now, this here, you may be wondering what this big blue heatsink is. This is the Northbridge. Northbridge works with the higher functions. It bridges the gap between the processor and the memory modules. This is the go-between. It also provides higher functions such as the PCI Express, anything that requires high-speed data transport, such as the USB 3.0 and PCI Express. Down here you'll see this here, which is the smallest one. This is the South Bridge. The South Bridge controls all the input-output functions, such as PCIe, SATAs, IDEs, LPTs, serial ports. That's basically what it controls. The USB 2.0 is also found in here. As you can see, it has a heat sink to help keep it cool. Now here, on here, you see a PCI Express 1. This means this is a single channel. You'll find some technology now, like USB 3.0 adapters, things like that, you can add using the one channel. The 16 channel, well, that one is mostly used for graphics. If you want to add a graphics card to your motherboard, you can. You want to make sure that it has the requirements for the graphics card. Graphics cards come in different sizes. We'll go into those details later on when I get to the graphics. But I don't have to worry about the motherboard because it has them built in. But I will still cover the graphics cards because some motherboards do not have them integrated. Down here below is the original PCIs. You'll see some motherboards that still have them because they are still being used and they're cost effective than using this PCI Express. So don't be surprised if you're going to get a motherboard and see PCIs on there. I particularly wanted this motherboard because it had two PCI expansions that I needed for my hardware that I'm going to add. But this is basically what you'll find on a typical motherboard. When you buy these, make sure that you get it matched with a processor because it makes it so much easier to match a processor to a motherboard. Once you have those done, and everything else will be easier to do. But mostly, make sure your motherboard and the processor are matched together. Now, when you're looking in motherboards and cases, you're going to come across two similar terms. You're going to come across ATX and micro ATX. It's a standard form factor that manufacturers use to allow intercompatibility between one manufacturer to another. Of course, you will find all this information on my website, so I won't have to go into details. But let me show you a similar a difference between the two. On the left, you're going to see a micro ATX. This is the smallest of the sizes. It's also commonly used. If you bought a computer from the store or desktop computer, you may often find these. They are common because if you look on the right on your screen, this is the ATX. This is the full version and the largest that is made. Now, as you can see, the differences between the components, this one here has less abilities compared to this one. This one had AGP for the graphics, whereas this one has it built in. I have 5 PCIs, whereas this one I have 2, but also have PCI Express, which is much faster. Over here I have the IDEs. This motherboard came from the 2001s. This was the motherboard that was my first computer that I built. It no longer works, but I use it to show differences between the technologies from then to now. As you can see, you got the IDEs, whereas over here you have SATAs. As you can see, the technology has advanced so much that the boards can be smaller and pack more of a punch. Over here, as you can see, the North Bridge. This is the North Bridge here on this old computer. This in here is the new heatsink. So it produces more power. Over here is the South Bridge, and over here is the South Bridge. Now these are the memory, and this is the oldest one. They only use a 20 pin power connector. This one here uses a 24, and it also has a 12 volt P4 connector for the processor. Now if you look in the back on this one, you'll see that it had separate keyboard and mouse. It also had an Ethernet, USB, and the COM ports. Remember the COM ports and the LPT that I showed you on this board here. You also has a game one and your standard audio. So as you can see, a lot of things have changed since then. Well, that's going to conclude this video. I just wanted to show you the basics about the motherboard. In the next video I'm going to show you how to start putting the computer together. So stay tuned. I'm your host, Mr. Fix-It. Thank you for watching.